everyone. How are you? We're going to go ahead and get started. I am Nicki Collett. I have no other relation to Keep Knoxville Beautiful. I actually work at the Tennessee Theater other than I have been asked to MC a couple of their events. It's a great organization and I am so happy to be here. Thank you all for being with us this morning. A few housekeeping items before we get started. If you're not here for the Keep Knoxville Beautiful Sustainability Summit, feel free to sneak out while I'm talking. No hard feelings. But we're going to talk about where the bathrooms are real quick. They're right there out in the hallway. You probably saw them when you walked in. Big thanks to the East Tennessee History Center for hosting us this morning. Again, bathrooms are right through those doors. Please feel free to step out and use them as needed throughout the day. Coffee is at the back of the room, provided by K-Brew and Cover Pro Roofing. And we are thankful for Eco Products and their donation of compostable products for our use today. There are canned waters and other beverages in the coolers for everyone, so help yourself. And we are trying to keep today's event as low waste as possible. The coffee cups, lids, and sleeves can all be composted, and there's signage above the bins that will tell you where what goes. And I know that can be confusing. I'm speaking from personal experience, so we're taking the guesswork out of it for you today. So just follow those signs. All right, on to today's event. In 1982, Keep Knoxville Beautiful was known as the Greater Knoxville Beautification Board, and they hosted Knoxville 2000, a vision of the future. Sounds really, really high tech. This symposium allowed Knoxvillians to imagine what this city might be like in 20 years. Fast forward to 2019, and in honor of KKB's 40th anniversary, the Knoxville 2000 program was reimagined and reintroduced as the Summit. Through the KKB Summit, we hope to inspire Knox County residents to continue to dream about the future while drawing on inspiration from other cities and programs. This year's featured topic is how to build a heat-resilient city. And we will hear from a mix of speakers today. We want to honor and showcase what is being done here in Knoxville to build a heat-resilient city. So you will hear from some local speakers throughout the day. And we are also joined by some incredible featured speakers that have traveled from across the country and across the Atlantic Ocean, Kendon, to speak with us today. Keep Knoxville Beautiful's mission is to inspire and empower Knox County communities to improve our quality of life through beautification and environmental stewardship. We hope that you will feel inspired by our speakers today to envision an exciting future for Knoxville that meets some of the challenges posed by the warming climate while also making our city a greener, cleaner, and more beautiful place for us all to live. You'll hear from me more throughout the day, but I think that's enough for me for now. So I am honored to bring up KKB's Executive Director, Lizzie Gaver, to thank our sponsors, make some introductions, and officially kick off this year's summit. Lizzie, come on up.
Hey, this is always so fun because it's like a room full of all my friends, and I love having you all here. So thank you for coming out today. I wanted to start by thanking our presenting sponsors for today. So the City of Knoxville Office of Sustainability is one of our presenting sponsors today, yay. Earthadelic is another one of our sponsors. They have a table over in the back, so thank you, Earthadelic. And TVA is our final presenting sponsor, so thank you, TVA. You'll hear from a couple of them throughout the day, but they're also in attendance, so if you see them, say thanks, say hi, but they'll be learning right alongside us today, so keep an eye out for them. I also want to thank our board members that are in the room. Can you all raise your hands? Say hi. Thank you to KKB's board. They're the reason that we're able to do this. They have so much inspiration and excitement for our mission, and they help us to put on events like this. So I wanted to say thank you. And I also could not do this without my wonderful staff. So I want to introduce Amanda Seals in the back. Say hi, Amanda. And then we have Jada is sitting right there. She's our AmeriCorps member. And then Brittany is our other AmeriCorps member, education coordinator. And then Kayla is right there. She's our UT work study student this year. So We wouldn't be able to do this without them, so make sure you say thank you to them at some point. Do we have any architects in the house? Yeah, a couple. Okay, so something exciting about this year is that we were able to get approved through AIA for continuing ed credits. So if that is something that is something you do, you'll get a total of, I think it's 3 credits for today for one of each main sessions. And I want to thank Dustin Durham from AIA East Tennessee for helping make that possible for us. So thank you, Dustin. So next, I'm going to bring up one of those local speakers that Nicki was talking about. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, otherwise known as NOAA, has their Air Resources Lab located in Oak Ridge, and they actually heard about our summit through one of our newsletters and reached out to us and asked how they could get involved, which was super exciting. And so we decided to invite them to come share a little bit about their research about heat in East Tennessee, to kind of frame a little bit about why the work we're doing is important and what we can learn from the science of it. So I'm going to bring up someone who is way smarter than me. It is Praveena Krishnan. Dr. Praveena Krishnan is a research physical scientist at NOAA's Air Resources Laboratory, Atmospheric Turbulence and Diffusion Division in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Her research broadly focuses on biosphere-atmosphere interactions across diverse ecosystems and spatial scales, integrating ground-based micrometeorological observations from field campaigns and monitoring networks, along with airborne and satellite observations. Currently, she's the principal scientist of the UrbanNet project at NOAA ARL, an advanced urban climate and greenhouse gas monitoring network being established in the Washington, D.C. area. So I'm going to bring up Praveena. Okay, and then we have a little clicker here. You can press it. Yeah, give it a second to. Ta-da!
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Lizzie, for the introduction. Very happy to be here. My name is Praveena Krishnan. I'm from NOAA Air Resource Lab, like he mentioned. My Deputy Director, Latola Miles, is here. Our Lab Director, John Kochendorf, is here to support me. So today, I'm going to present a glimpse of NOAA's urban heat programs. Why urban? We know that urbanization is increasing day by day, and even though the area is only 5% of the terrestrial area, more than 50% of the global population live in the urban area, and more than 80% of the US population live in the urban area, making them critical for climate change mitigation, adaptation, and resilient efforts. And these areas are also very vulnerable to environmental impacts like poor air quality, extreme heat, floods, hurricanes, to cite a few. So in addition to that, this area gives us an opportunity as a focal points for innovation and testing sociable solutions, scalable solutions to challenges arising due to climate change. So NOAA's mission is to understand and predict changes in climate, weather, and oceans, and to support communities to adapt to these changes. Why urban need? The changes from a natural landscape to urban area comes with a price because it increases the temperature of the environment. So the urban areas are warmer than the green areas and leading to a phenomenon called the urban heat island. So you can also see here the map of the urban heat islands that is calculated from the impervious surfaces and the temperature difference. There are different factors that contribute to the rise in temperature because the surfaces like concrete, asphalt, etc. increases the temperature, absorb the radiation, and they don't allow the water to go to the ground, and thereby reducing the evaporation that help with the cooling, and also the substances we use and additional pollutants from the urban area, and also the high building that prevents the wind flow, leading to poor air quality as well. So in addition to that, we know that increase in global warming is rising the temperatures. That is an additional burden adding to the urban area. It's not all over the US. And the number of days with the high heat, extreme heat is increasing day by day. We call it heat waves. For example, in Washington, D.C., if it is above 90 degree Fahrenheit, it is a heat wave period for a few days. But we noticed that the duration and the temperature during the heat wave and the frequency of its occurrence is increasing day by day. And all the climate projections that is using the greenhouse gas measurements are projecting huge changes in temperature, especially nighttime temperature. So even if it is a heat wave day, there is high temperature during daytime, and nighttime also we are going through the thing which lead to heat stress. It is affecting our human body, and we know that the number of fatalities are increasing due to urban heat alone and heat all over the world. And this number of deaths is higher than the number of fatalities from other natural disasters combined. So this trend is increasing. So what is the solution? So we have to go for data-driven and heat resilient strategies to face these challenges. NOAA's urban work is tremendous, and I am giving a glimpse of some of the examples. We have operational observations through Air Resource Lab, and there are field campaigns by Chemical Science Division Lab, and which take care of the urban pollution and the greenhouse gas, and citizen science programs and sort of modeling efforts to predict what is going to happen. And there are many applications. We do urban heat mitigation, adaptation of different areas, lakes and coastal and other regions. So today I'm going to talk about our urban net and in the Washington DC area, and also citizen science urban heat observations. That will be very relevant to this program of making Knoxville beautiful. An urban net is a climate and meteorological net that is part of that is a monitored project of NOAA's Air Resource Laboratory that is getting established in the Washington DC. It is actually built on the success of DC Net. That was an emergency response project which was established post 9/11 to predict the dispersion of hazardous substance any in the national capital region, because we realized that we need real-time observations to improve the quality of numerical weather prediction models and also how to predict the dispersion of the pollutants. So this is getting established in the area. Right, currently we have 5 sites and 4 locations. We are planning to expand the number of sites and also to expand to other locations. This data also is very much useful to the greenhouse modeling and monitoring efforts by NOAA. It is called Urban GEMS, and it is part of US government's urban emission and monitoring program in collaboration with many other agencies. So this is a network on tower in the Washington DC in the Department of Commerce building. And we have used these observations from the historical data from 2003, which was discontinued later, so that is why we are renewing this project. And we noticed that the data from all these observations, we clearly notice that these observations indicates a frequency and amplitude of the heat waves in this region. And you can also see the index, and it affects the heat stress. There are different indices we call heat index. For example, here you can see the periods where heat waves where that heat index was very high, and also see the trend that is increasing per day, that the magnitude of the temperature is increasing. Another thing is how it's going to affect the air quality, and it will affect the dispersion. That is something currently we are pursuing. And this data is available online. If you Google UrbanNet NOAA, you can see the data from all the sites, and it is available online. So let us go to the next thing, that is NOAA's NIHIS, that is National Integrated Heat Health Information System. We have conducting many urban heat mapping campaign in collaboration with the NOAA local organizers across United States, and also we conduct many international campaigns in association with the local communities and local government there. And for this purpose, NOAA is collaborating with local communities, private sector, academic, and other volunteers helping here, especially Capital Strategies, that is the private sector. They are helping with this campaign for the Heat Watch program. And you can see on the right side, that is a difference at tree makes in the Las Cruz area during this campaign. That is the thermal image. You can see almost 50 Fahrenheit difference there. So all over the America, this campaign was conducted. More than 75 communities already made use of this campaign. And you can see the colors indicates the warmest day of the year. And how many of you are aware that we conducted this campaign in Knoxville? So we conducted this campaign in Knoxville and Nashville in 2022. If you are not aware of this thing, just Google heat.gov, or you can look at this, link here I have provided here. So we conducted this campaign in Knoxville in August 2022, and there are so many kudos to all the participants and organizers and everybody who participated in this campaign. It is done 3 times. Every morning and at 3 to 4 in the afternoon and also in the evening, and the local the volunteers participate. They carry the sensors around the specific maps in vehicle, and all the data is collected by the sensors, and we use different methods to retrieve all this information, and using machine learning and satellite information we develop this as a heat map. So this is the heat map for Knoxville. It is providing tremendous opportunity to design the city and identify the hotspots. And many areas, it is very well known that the very vulnerable communities are very much affected if there is a heat wave in situation. It will be affecting their health as well. So you can clearly see the impacts from preserved forest or the residential areas with no vegetation, or the main roads where we have very pervious surfaces. So this campaign is conducted, and also this data can be used in a very detailed way. I was very happy to see University Tennessee study where they use the land cover map. You can see the red lines, the red colors on the top are land cover, that is, red is more urban area, and they use this map to identify the conditions, socially vulnerable, heat vulnerable bus stops in the Knoxville, and how they can improve it. So there are so many methods already proven successful, like for example tree planting, or using materials that don't absorb much radiation. They are reflecting surfaces, so heat roofs to site a few. So this data has been extensively used by all over America, and that has been used for nature-based solutions, tabletop exercise, and local heat planning. For example, in Hawaii, Honolulu, I think that's the correct word, and they use this for planting. Whereas in Las Vegas, they decided to replant the bus stops to avoid the heat impact of the bus riders, and also they used the different materials on the road and the nearby areas as a reflecting surfaces. And same with Texas and Boston to site effort. These are some of the examples, and you can go to heat.gov to learn more on this project. So all these campaigns right now, we are collaborating with the different agencies to cope this program, and there are a lot of opportunities for local and private partnership. That is how this was made possible in Knoxville, and there are a lot of engagement for innovation in the academic area, and we have international partnership on the heat area, like as shown here. And especially regarding the resilience part, urban resilience, you have different fundings available, and the local community also received funding for heat map campaign, and you can go there. And recently another tool was established that called heat risk. If you go there, you know whether to step out or not today. You know the impact of heat on that day. And there is also US climate resilience toolkits available. So together, NOAA is trying to improve and make accessible climate services, providing valuable, scaled, and information in key mission areas, and these are also relevant for urban areas, especially heat. So we are right now with a mission to climate ready nation and providing the data information for support meaningful, equitable, and sustainable climate actions. So thank you so much for this opportunity to talk here. If you have any questions, you can contact me or anybody in NOAA.
Thank you so much for that, Praveena. And it's a very timely topic, not only for today's summit, but last night. It's kind of a crazy weather event, and I think it's all connected. I hope nobody sustained any damage from the tornado warning that kind of came through last night. Before I bring up our next speaker, we wanted to give a special shout out to ZC Productions. They are filming today, and we're really thankful for their partnership. They are going to be working with KKB to gather footage throughout the year at different events that they have to have and to be able to showcase all the great work that they're doing. So thank you so much to ZC Productions. Okay, next up we have Grace Levin with the City of Knoxville. Since 2020, Grace has served as the City of Knoxville Sustainability Coordinator. And as Sustainability Coordinator, Grace manages data and global reporting. She researches programs and policies and leads several major projects, such as the region's Climate Pollution Reduction Grant. Prior to joining the City of Knoxville, Grace managed communications and programs for the Research Triangle Clean Tech Cluster in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I forgot to ask her last night how she feels about the Tar Heels. As long as she's not a Wolfpack or a Duke Blue Devil, we're good to go. Okay, I see some Wolfpack in here. That's okay, nobody's perfect. Before that, she served as the City of Raleigh, she served with the City of Raleigh as a Sustainability Program Coordinator through AmeriCorps Vista, focusing on residential energy efficiency. A native of East Tennessee, Grace completed a degree in Global Studies and Sustainability from the University of Tennessee, including notable research projects and an internship with the Town of Farragut sustainability staff. She has also held multiple volunteer leadership roles in the Sierra Club, so please join me in welcoming Grace Levin.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having us today. The city was really excited to sponsor this event. Obviously, there's a lot of overlap, not only with heat resilience, but KKB's broader mission. As mentioned, my name is Grace Levin. I've served as Knoxville Sustainability Coordinator since 2020. I wanted to give a quick overview of our office because not everyone knows that the city has an Office of Sustainability. So I wanted to first make a quick and exciting introduction to our team. So we are a staff of 3.5. We have a director, deputy director, and me, coordinator, and a part-time assistant. And one of the fun announcements I get to make today is that we have a new director who's sitting here in the room today, Patience Melnick, who was formerly executive director of Keep Knoxville Beautiful, and also served 4 years with the city's Office of Waste and Resources. So we're very lucky to have her and excited for her to start Monday. Is that right, Patience? If you have any questions, I'm going to direct you to her after my presentation. So our office covers a little bit of everything. Sustainability offices look very different across the country. I've happened to work in 3, and they all did very different focus areas. Primarily, our focus is on climate goals that were established by City Council back in 2019. So in 2019, City Council unanimously voted to adopt 2 climate goals. One, to reduce emissions from city operations, meaning the day-to-day of our fleet, our buildings, etc., 50% from 2005 to 2030. You can see this data is a little old. We are very close, if not past that goal already. And we also set another goal back in 2019 to reduce emissions from the community at large, meaning you guys, your companies, your organizations, the people driving our streets, the people occupying homes and businesses throughout the area, 80% from 2005 to 2050. And spoiler alert, as you can see, we're headed the wrong direction. So part of the thing that I'm here to talk today about is community involvement in climate planning in the long term. The project that I was asked to speak today about is, we call it Locally Breathe. It's an effort that's been going on for the last 1.5 years, and many of the people in the room here have been involved. I just wanted a quick show of hands. Who's participated in CPRG or Breathe? Awesome. Okay, I'm glad that the majority of you have not. I think this is a really exciting opportunity. For those that have participated, you can zone out for the next 10 minutes. So, I don't think I have to take too much of a leap of faith here to assume that if you're here to support a heat resilient city, that you also have some knowledge of climate change and the impact on the local community. Thank you, Dr. Krishnan, for explaining what this looks like in Knoxville. But we know modern human activities are emitting greenhouse gases at unprecedented rates, which are causing changes not only to our global climate, but causing impacts here locally. We don't have to look much farther than the last year to find a lot of events. Science can't necessarily tie natural hazards to increasing climate with 100% certainty, but we have seen an increase in the number of extreme heat and cool events. The freezing events that happened here a few weeks ago are obviously an indicator of things that we need to prepare for in a global changing climate. So that said, the project that we're here to talk about today, Climate Pollution Reduction Grants, it's a federal program that has provided nearly $5 billion to over 220 governing bodies across the states to develop, part 1, and implement, part 2, climate plans to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and other harmful air pollutants. One small confusing thing about this that is unique to CPRG, not a lot of other grants have this, is that the state also has this. So the state was awarded $3 million to complete a statewide planning process. We, Nashville and Memphis, also were awarded $1 million each to complete a analysis for our metro areas. You'll hear me call it an MSA, Metro Statistical Area. The important thing to note is that this is the first time that our metro area has come together to even discuss emissions and climate, much less create a plan for it. Oh, this got cut off. Okay. This list goes past the floor. All of this to say, the City of Knoxville was the lead award recipient. We work closely with Knox Planning and a couple of other consultants. Do we have anyone from 3 Cubed in the room? I'm guessing not. All right. 3 Cubed is a Knoxville-based social science research agency that has supported us a lot in the equity and local engagement components. If you could see this whole list, you would see over 100 invitees that have been at the table for the last year and a half participating to give us input on what's already going on in the region. We did a lot of research in the early stages of this process, but there's always something that local government misses. So these stakeholders are at the table to really inform the strategies that will work, that will actually work for here in East Tennessee. So there are 2 components to CPRG, the emission calculations. I'm going to breeze over this quickly because it's very technical, but our technical team prepared a simplified emission inventory for the priority climate action plan. This is something we've already submitted. I'll show you a timeline in a second. So this is already done. Per the grant requirements, we only had to do a simplified inventory that covered 3 of the primary sectors of emissions, which are buildings, transportation, and waste. So as you can see, we did projections out through 2050 showing business as usual. If nothing changes, if everyone goes about their days in the same ways that they always have, we expect an increase. For the comprehensive climate action plan, which is where we're at now, that's what I'm here today to talk about. We're expanding that analysis to include what we call an economy-wide inventory that adds every single source of emissions, including agriculture, industry, as well as carbon sinks, forests and natural lands, things like that. We're also required to put together emission reduction measures. So for the PCAP, and I'll show you this impressive timeline in a second, but we basically had 5 months to put together the region's first ever climate plan, and that is well, we did it. It is a possible task, but it was a difficult task. So what we did for the first stage, the Priority Climate Action Plan, was assembling an advisory committee of 15 regional stakeholders representing every sector we could imagine, local government and implementing bodies, private industry, advocacy groups, and environmental groups to prioritize 7 measures in energy, buildings, and transportation. But for the comprehensive climate action plan, we're convening a robust coalition, that list of stakeholders that you saw, that expands those strategies to more sectors and are analyzed in far more detail. I'm not going to go through all of these, but all this to say, one of the questions that we first get is like, well, what analysis are you actually doing on these strategies? And I would counter a pretty robust analysis, not only looking at the emission and co-pollutant reductions, but also the socioeconomic benefits and challenges for our area. We're convening a workforce conversation around this to make sure that we are addressing, we're not only analyzing the needs and gaps, but also looking at ways to proactively solve them. So we have 3 groups of working groups, the sector working groups, so we have 3 of those: buildings and energy, transportation and land use planning, and then finally, agricultural, natural working lands, and waste. We also have, like I mentioned, the workforce group and an equity group that is specifically dedicated to looking at the impacts of these strategies on low income, and disadvantaged communities throughout the region. They have been all 3 of these, well, I'll say all 5 of these groups have been active since last fall and are continuing to meet. I'll show you the timeline in a second. But over the course of the first few rounds of meeting with these groups, we've identified a number of emission reduction measures that I think Davey passed them out, so they should be on your table. I have them in full, and I have them summarized here. Obviously, there's value in the nuance of the explicit language being used, but I wanted to highlight that we are really covering a broad range of sectors, sources. We're looking at energy efficiency, we're looking at decarbonization, meaning frequently to change away from fossil fuels towards cleaner fuels. We're looking at vehicles, both in the public sphere as well as private infrastructure to support household transitions to cleaner vehicles. We're looking at transportation systems. We're looking at reducing VMT, vehicle miles traveled, to make sure that people have options to not have to drive a personal car alone if they don't have to. We're looking at public transit and alternative transportation. We're also looking at agriculture in a way that I think is the first time for the region. East Tennessee, I'm from Oak Ridge. East Tennessee has a long and very rich history of agriculture, and it's very important to our constituents that we really honor that legacy of natural lands and connection to our farms. So we're looking at ways to leverage existing infrastructure, for example, the robust farming community here in East Tennessee, to look at how we can implement best practices like carbon sequestration in the soil, reducing runoff from fertilizers, and other practices that will reduce the overall emissions. We're also looking at things like tree canopy, which you'll hear about later today from Casey Krause, and other solid waste reduction managers. So, sorry, this formatting is odd, but I wanted to show you where we are in the process. So our award was received back at the end of 2023 in August, and we submitted the Priority Climate Action Plan in March of the following year, so about 5 months apart. We have been working over the last year to develop the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan, and where we are right now, unfortunately, matches with the angry red text there, the federal freeze. So for those that don't know, the federal administration, President Trump has issued several executive orders that freeze federal funding allocated for climate planning. We don't have time to get into the nuance of this today. I'm going to continue this presentation as if we're picking this back up as soon as we have clarity on the rules and regulations around the program. If things continue, we will be continuing working group meetings throughout 2025 where we are not only getting further consensus on the measures that we're looking at, but also nuancing them. What will it take to actually implement these? How much is it going to cost? Who should be implementing it? And how do we get them some buy-in? We'll also be doing a public engagement session. I'm going to be looking at doing workshops for community groups to make sure that folks understand that this is going on and feel some sort of buy into the process, because at the end of the day, while institutions are largely responsible for the majority of emissions, there is a role for individuals in this work. All of this is pointing towards the production of the Comprehensive Climate Action Plan, which is due to the EPA, fingers crossed, in December of next year. And then the project does continue for another 2 years after that for a final status report due in 2027. So that said, before I finish, I did want to offer some challenges. The next speaker, the speaker that I'm here to introduce, is going to talk about sort of the communities that have seen the other side of climate planning, that have successfully implemented a climate action plan. For now, Knoxville is still in the midst of this process. And so I think some of the challenges worth talking about are, one, this federal funding freeze. We don't know the direction of this project. I'll be honest with you. I'm keeping stakeholders as up to date as I can, but we may have some significant delays, if not potential project closure as a result of the federal decisions. Another challenge is that if things continue, this plan is not required to be adopted by any one agency, and it doesn't really make sense for a plan to be, this is a 9-county regional plan. We don't have any governing bodies that cover that same territory. And so I'm looking at this, trying to think creatively about how to get local governments and other people like you guys in the room to adopt or work towards other voluntary commitments, things like green fleet policies in your organization or energy efficiency goals. I want to stress that the city has done almost all of them and that we are here as a resource to you. We actually hosted some funding workshops last week to talk about how to actually get these projects off the ground. And I can connect you to almost certainly to someone in the room that has done this kind of work and can support you in the process of developing your own policy. Finally, I will also candidly say that one of the challenges has been the majority of participation in the CPRG process has been from City of Knoxville stakeholders, and while that is wonderful, it's a lot of people here in the room today, there hasn't been as much representation from outside of the City of Knoxville through that 9-county region, and so we've been targeting groups that are representing the outside areas, but could really use y'all's help to get people to the table. With that, I think I'm going to close things out. Thank you so much, Lizzie. And pass the buck, so to speak, to our next speaker, Kendon Jung. Driving strategic innovation in policy, operations, communications, and design for a circular economy, social impact, resilience, and sustainability. Kendon Jung is a designer of resilient enterprises and a global futures scholar. His vision is to build human potential by making sustainable futures universally accessible and tangible. Kendon has been at the forefront of desert water policy, global corporate social impact, and urban resiliency in 3 nationally recognized research centers, bringing extensive experience in working with local businesses, nonprofits, and public agencies to achieve sustainability goals. Notably, and this is where the tie-in occurs, Kendon led the City of Tempe, Arizona's Sustainability and Resilience Commission for almost a decade, employing innovation, interdisciplinary collaboration, and long-term visioning to help guide Tempe towards a more sustainable future. Under his tenure, the office has grown from a temporary position of 1 and a budget of none to a team of 8 and a budget of over $1 million. His academic background includes a bachelor's in sustainable urban dynamics and a master's in higher and post-secondary education from ASU, and he is currently completing a Fulbright fellowship in Germany, came all the way across the sea for this event, as part of his doctorate research to explore how design can create holistic environments that accelerate sustainable transitions. Above all else, Kendon Jung is relentless in his commitment to and pursuit of sustainable solutions for all, dedicated to empowering individuals and making a positive impact on the world. With that, I'd like to welcome Kendon.
Howdy, y'all. Whoa. Howdy, y'all. Pleasure to be here. And first, I want to say I think we should change how we introduce our birthdays. So I'm 34 years old, but I think in these pressing times, it's time to change to I was born at 350.86 parts per million. This is a great way to start normalize this type of work, which really is about building trust. And that the central theme within the City of Tempe's work, I think, is how do we do this? Where do we do this, and how do we build some capacity in this social infrastructure? So I'm going to start out with a story. This is Broadway College. My grandparents worked at ASU. My parents met at ASU. We have like 9 degrees from this institution, and this is about half mile from ASU as I'm biking from home to go to class. And in this story, my parents they're educators and teachers. They were like, you are not going to be driven to school. You'll get yourself there and you will figure it out. And from this intersection in particular, I would sit right where this little scooter is and just cook. City of Tempe and City of Phoenix in the last summer have had over 100 days of over 110 Fahrenheit. So when you're trying to go to school and sitting, waiting for the crosswalk next to all the cars idling, you feel 140 Fahrenheit sitting at this light with the asphalt heat coming up and the car exhaust and people just being cranky. And I think that within this was my aha moment. I've always been oriented to sustainability and equity work and systems thinking. That really drove home to me that my home was going to be cooked if we don't do anything about it. And from this, I went to the institution. I got my degree in urban dynamics, really saw the play of how politics and science can be blended together when we're built on trust. And fast forwarding through our degrees and times at ASU, the anxiety of this work really grows. That wicked problems are more visible now, more visible now than they have been ever. And that with this, especially in Phoenix, our top anxiety, while heat is a massive contributor to this, is really water, and that water is the lifeblood of our region that enables trees and vegetation and unique ways of cooling to be possible. And yet we have this incredible 30-year drought that we're dealing with. And this quote here, which I think is really important, is that climate action is a top anxiety of our millennials, Gen Z, and Alpha generation. And that they believe businesses and municipalities need to be doing significantly more in order to make it easier for them to take action. Now, whether or not you're on either side of individual responsibility or community or company responsibility, I think that this anxiety is something that is really tangible in how we can create change. And so as we went into this, and me being an emerging leader at the time, not really knowing how to affect change, this question of how does a city that's facing these record heats and incredibly limited water supply, how do we still continue to grow? Because this is not a conversation that any of our council wanted to challenge. We are a growing space despite being landlocked. How do we continue to grow in spite of these challenges? And that, for me, it really starts with the people. It's people like you and me. It is people who are doing the work. How can we take small steps towards this transformation that we need to achieve? So for me, in reflecting on the last 10 years of doing this work with City of Tempe, that these are our three major themes within the work. I'll get into the specifics of what we accomplished, but these were ways that we tried to approach how we designed this work. I think another piece that's incredibly interesting to this, so as mentioned, I'm in Germany right now finishing my Fulbright research on service design and sustainability, and designers from across the world that I've been interviewing have noted that their work in sustainability is predominantly social sustainability. This is odd. Sustainability is supposed to be the trifecta of social, environmental, and economic. And yet these people that in the design world are largely responsible for consumption and being tools of capitalism have mentioned that social design or social sustainability is something that they predominantly work at. And so through this, and as I was thinking about these themes, that climate work is culture work. It is not technology, although adopting different technologies and different mitigations are absolutely critical to not cooking us off the side of the planet. But this is culture work, and that we have to create conditions of social change that will allow us to be able to move forward at a faster and faster rate. So, starting off with representation. This was me about 10 years ago. I had just started at Arizona State University working in the student affairs office, developing student leaders to be climate action leaders within the university and their campus. And that from this space, trust building was incredibly important to how we were building community-driven change. That building trust required listening and transparency, as well as a willingness to include diverse voices. And that from this was me working at Starbucks. I had no opportunity at the time. They were not really hiring for positions. And so when I was trying to figure out different ways to get involved, my local council member, who was running for office at the time, her name is Lauren Kuby, an absolute powerhouse for sustainability outcomes, was knocking on different doors and came to my parents' house and said, "I'm running for council, will you vote for me?" My dad was like, "My kid is stuck in my basement, who's not been able to get a job in the degree that you are," because she worked at Arizona State University in the Sustainability College. He's like, what's wrong with this? And so part of her first works, and I'll show the timeline later on, as a council member, was to establish a commission. And that she appointed me to the commission at that time as one of the many ways in which younger people could get involved in the space. And from that, we were really, we had started building the commission. We were looking at, which by the way, this is our charge, to advise, research, and recommend to City Council different policies and programs that advance sustainability in Tempe. And that we had an incredibly large scope, as you saw earlier from the grant coverage with Climate Action Plan, that these were all of our bullet points we were supposed to deliver on. Which is a bit wild, especially in a commission that hadn't existed before, a city that had realistically no earlier history in doing climate or even energy efficiency work, and that this was really hard. And so these were some of our objectives that we were delivering on. But I think a really key piece of the Sustainability Commission that was very intentional with its structure was that representation was cooked into our membership. That we actually, in the seats, it was required that there was a graduate student, that there was an undergraduate student seat, that there was a business advocacy seat, there was a neighborhood seat, there was an educator seat, there was a scientist seat. And so this representation was built into our actual sitting body that was comprised of 11 local Tempe folks to help inform this work. And as you can see, we worked on a lot of different things, and that our early work, as I mentioned earlier, in culture building was to be a culture catalyst, to provide this leadership, education, and guidance on different programs that help to inspire the region, the nation, and hopefully the world. Being able to come here tells us that we are partially living our mission of inspiring other spaces, but it was not always that way. And so another element. So anyway, getting back to our timeline. When we had first started out, we did a lot of work on positioning the city to start developing representation. Our commission was established. We then went after the Global Compact of Mayors. This was a tool that cities can use in order to establish baseline greenhouse gas emissions. And that this required that it was tracked. And so, in partnership with the university, we actually co-funded the first manager of sustainability. This was our temporary position in order to carry out this work and to ensure that the city and the university, so Arizona State University is one of the largest in the country. I feel like it's playing Monopoly with Tempe and it keeps expanding. So it was very intentional to make sure that this person co-funded between the city and the university was to bring the synergies of the university's knowledge and work into the city and vice versa. And that led us into how we so this was me back in 2019, speaking at our first adoption of our climate action plan. As was mentioned earlier, using the kind of bare bones plan to socialize the idea with council, with the community members, was really critical for our buy-in. Now, you'll notice we have a similar chart with our emissions, and that our residential energy, our transportation is a little bit different. We're a very dense urban space, and City of Tempe actually spends the most per person on alternative transit. And this is because we are in the middle of the Phoenix region, where people from Queen Creek are commuting over about an hour and a half through the urban core to get to their jobs on the other side of the city. So we spend a lot on transit and transit options. But this was our North Star and how we were thinking about our climate action plan that we'll get into in a little bit later. But one thing I want to call out that was, again, designed to align the commission's representation with our community is these purple boxes here. That these were our stakeholder groups that we were mission critical wanting to include. And we organized this in terms of our youth. So youth, especially following the lawsuits that are happening in Europe, that inheriting a dying world is a liability, and that the way we can incorporate youth values into the way we design cities that are going to be here for a millennia, unless we get cooked off, was really important to bring that type of perspective in when many of them don't have voting privileges. We also brought in our business community, because in City of Tempe, small business is an integral part of our core identity, and that without them, they can pretty easily and quickly shut us down. Skipping over the justice one for a second, because I want to get back to this. Neighborhoods was another major element, that anyone, no matter where you were, where you lived in Tempe, that you could feel the presence of sustainability, the accessibility of its resources in your neighborhood, regardless of socioeconomic background. And so with our justice work, this was really acknowledging that sustainability, especially in Tempe, and Phoenix to a larger extent has been predominantly a white female followed by white male profession, and that if we were to go and do this work to build strong connections with our community, that we cannot be the ones representing it, that we need to work with trusted partners within this group. So, for example, CHISPA, which is a Hispanic advocacy group local to our area, has been doing a significant amount of work in climate action, and that there was already a history of mistrust on how the government was or was not working in Hispanic areas. So by partnering with these local advocacy groups, really spoke to our intention to make sure we were being truthful, transparent, and empowering our different groups to be part of the solution. So I mention this because these were our 4 highlight areas. They align with our commission's composition. And how we knew that we had struck something special is our first climate action planning meeting in the Tempe Public Library had 96 participants. I was like, what? Because Tempe also contextually is a university town, much like this, surrounded by a very rural space where climate work was not necessarily received very friendly. And so this kind of comes into the urban core a bit. But the fact that we were trying to address, and we'll get into this in, I think it's the next couple of slides, is how we wanted to do this work, which for us really focused on extreme heat, transit, and energy. And that these core concepts were able to touch every community member wherever they were, and it showed up in how they were wanting to participate. With that, we had over six large-scale planning sessions that were all about 96 to 120 participants each time, and that this consistency created a lot of trust in our city council to be able to trust the process, and that yes, we were committing to a bare bones climate action plan, but that this was being used to start to build something larger, and that this is where our second theme comes into play, and that is imagination. So this will kind of go a little bit around, but I wanted to start off with another story. The image that you're looking at is downtown Tempe. It is filled with ficus, which, do we have any landscape architects or plant people in the room? Yep. Ficus loves pipes and ripping things apart from underground. So these ficus represent a conversation that I had with a council member. I'll leave his name off the record. But we were working on the redevelopment of the downtown area using the International Green Construction Codes. And that this was a way to start to socialize the idea of this code that we wanted to introduce. And he did not want it. Like every single angle we were trying to get at to push, and this was just testing the code. This was not using all of the elements, this was just testing. He did not want it. The Green Stormwater Infrastructure Code that we were trying to push forward, nothing about it. And so I went to have a conversation with him to figure out, why the hell do you like these ficus? And in this conversation with him, he told me about a story where he had his first drink turning 21 with his father. And that it was on this space, which, to be quite honest, over the last 15 years, it has really gone downhill in terms of the quality of the space and the kind of excessive drinking behaviors that is especially prevalent in our alpha generation. But this memory of having that first drink with his father stood out to him, and that he was anchoring the retention, the preservation of this memory standing underneath these ficus trees. So with this was an aha moment for me, that in the way that we design, in the way that we introduce policies, that there are memories anchored to space and place that are incredibly powerful and is an opportunity for us to pivot how we preserve the memory. So, in this, we talked a lot about how, what built an inviting space, what built a space that you wanted to be in. How can we recreate this in different design choices that allowed for the resilient practices we need to be incorporated and to continue to have generations of future first rings with people turning 21 and their dads and whatnot. And it did then help that later on the state came in and said, by the way, this is now classified as invasive species and there's no way in hell you're putting it back in. But there was this diffusion, this social kind of trust that was built because we had moved forward with a different plant palette, and that this person was very focused on a beautiful city, and that changing the definition of beautiful does not mean changing the definition of how you use a space. So ficus, in using this as an opportunity, really helped me to look at how we imagine the way we understand spaces differently. With that, sorry, I have my notes over here. I want everyone to take a minute, close your eyes, take a deep breath in, and think about the last time that you did something that you were unsure about. What was that emotion? What was that gut feeling? What was that thing that you didn't know what the next steps were? How did that manifest? How does it feel? Just sit with that. It's uncomfortable. It's a challenge. And that change, in many ways, invokes this guttural reaction. And the way that we can listen and look for imagination can really help with reorganizing this and bringing people alongside us. Now I'm going to pivot a little bit. This imagination element and really trying to listen to understand was also very clear in the IGCC, which we just passed as a voluntary adoption, and we are looking to move forward into mandatory in 3 years, which is very aggressive. But this idea of imagination and this council member, who was also originally against the International Green Construction Code, because he believed, he was a fire chief. He works at a fire station. He has his firefighters as first responders to buildings that are in catastrophe. And that for some reason he had this, or not for some reason, for a very good reason, he was under the impression that the installation of solar power and batteries puts first responders in jeopardy for exploding batteries. And using the ficus story to guide the way that I was trying to listen and understand that we position the IGCC as we are creating policy space to explore what can we do. And that, yes, we want to get to mandatory, but we understand that there is a transition period of not only the why is clear, the how is clear, but the emotions within this and the change process is not. And so using this, we tried to start to work on imagining new futures. So this was actually a partnership with AIA of Arizona, where we tried to, we created a concepts competition, where we put out there a design challenge to say, how can we build a community space that is anchoring the IGCC, the green stormwater infrastructure, and Tempe's climate action plan into this site project right here. So this is the Food City project. It's been basically vacant for about 3 years. It's in a kind of rough part of the neighborhood. And so we use this, and I was pushing for this so hard because of these conversations with council and different community members, where not only was the little tidbits of exploding batteries causing fear, but also of a future where every building looks the same, that there is a corporatization, there is a mass development, like everything looks the same. And so we used this design competition to create different futures, to position this work. And this was one of the ways in which we got the design community to be interested in Tempe, the developer community to know that the city was seriously considering this work, and that we were trying to create different toolkits to help with development. And then to position with council what these futures can look like, because we also had a very big development project with the Coyotes, in case you saw that from across the country. Yeah, that was a kerfuffle. Sorry, the Coyotes hockey team.
So bad they left, right?
Yes, they are. The team has left, the rights are still here, but that's a whole another can of worms. So they were very reactive to this notion of unfamiliar futures. And so we used the design competition to create this attention and energy around considering these preferred futures. And then what you see here on the other side, the left, is how we then tried to position another way to view futures. And so we did an analysis of all of the different cities in which IGCC had been adopted. And we showed where their level of maturity fell in using and expanding the use of the IGCC. So you see here, Tempe is at the bottom. But City of Scottsdale, which we share a border with, is our next level up. And then we used other national and international examples. And we showed why we thought that these were important, and that this was, again, inside of our climate action plan. So this was another way in which we were trying to position all of this, this imagining. But whether or not my rumblings are necessarily clear within this, that all of this was really designed to position this as a voluntary adoption. That we are creating policy space. This is what one future could look like. Here are what existing futures in other cities can look like. We are going to create this to figure out how we can move this forward. And this was really to address another issue, or the main issue, that was our city staff. Now, I want to be very clear, the city staff had a hard enough job as it is. And that the culture change that we were really working towards was to create a willingness to accept change, and that our staff members were worried about their ability to pull this off. That's a very different conversation than can it be done, but can I do it? And so all of this work was creating this positive environment in which the staff can really stretch. They can say, what could we do, not what can't we do? And that this was a really important pivotal moment for us because with that, our staff members, after doing this type of work and socializing them through the process, we were able to create a shared vision that galvanized a community to dream bigger and to look not at the limitations but at the possibilities. And that this reduced risk so that we were not going alone. That was a really important part in imagining and how we can push forward. Which brings us to our next one, collaboration. So, as I mentioned earlier, these were our 100 days over 110 Fahrenheit in Phoenix, which, by the way, if you are to go there, so at Arizona State University, I'm a sustainability manager for our operations division. We lost over 250,000 saguaro that were literally cooked off of the campus because of this. So this is a very real manifestation of a plant that is supposed to be resilient to the heat, not being able to take it, not being able to create any reprieve from our different monsoon seasons that come in and give a break. But that sustainability within this so we're seeing this state of climate emergency, least of which is our ability to respond to it. So with this is our introduction into the resilient energy hubs or resiliency hubs that we have, which, as our kind of data shows here, that there were very specific areas of our landlocked city that are both socioeconomically disadvantaged, that are heat disadvantaged, as well as my favorite one. This was our urban tree master plan, illuminated where there was not shade coverage. So a community that is less likely to have vehicles also has the least amount of trees to protect them in order to get from wherever they need to go. And so we're also, and this is something that I'm working towards in the next couple of months, is actually declaring a state of climate emergency for the city of Tempe, but anchoring it in this area. That this, as Tempeans, we are neighbors, we take care of each other, and that the climate risks are an emergency for our neighbors, especially here, but across the region. And so, with that said, and having these different conversations, the resiliency hubs, while a built tool, are just an anchoring of many services that the city already provides. So we started out with looking at what does it mean to be a community resiliency center. It was, to be quite honest, originally a tool used, an approach used by the city to try and gain access to preferable solar rates from our utility company. In Phoenix, residential gets one rate, commercial gets another, municipalities get a third. And that it was very difficult for the city to be able to expand its solar generation and storage at a disadvantaged rate of solar generation and storage. So this, as a key piece of why city buildings would be considered part of a community, is how we started this process. But we also realized through this, and mentioning earlier about our climate justice work, that city buildings are not always the community building. There are churches. There are PTSAs, PTAs. There are different book clubs, and that this opens the opportunity for resilience hubs to build into something much larger. So when we were having this conversation, or when we came to this realization, looked at all of the different sites across Tempe that were considered trusted spaces. The city, you may argue, at that time wasn't trusted, but is still part of a community building. That this was part of an inventory of all kinds of different buildings that can be considered resiliency hubs. So we went to the utility company. SRP is our local provider. They're also, I believe, one of the largest, if not largest, utility companies in the country. And we presented this to them as we need to get information on the energy use in this area in order to adjust what we're going to bring to these community members to help make them resilient to extreme heats. And our goal was only to get preferential rates. We had snuck in funding just in case they had a little extra on the side. But this set the stage for our longer term game, because they didn't actually want to give us the data. Not really sure why, but they understood why this was important. And so I say this because our next step with this was was trying to create information in this space. So at this time, I think we only had three FTEs at the time in the office, and the budgeting process that we were going through, for those that are not yet familiar, cities usually have a capital campaign budget. This is the building of things, and then they have an operating budget or a process. And this is for the people and programs. And at that time, I think this was shortly before, this was after the pandemic. The city had cut resources to the departments, but specifically sustainability programs had been cut 75% or 78%, sorry, the largest percentage cut out of any department across the city. So using this history of being a climate leader with the Global Compact of Mayors, of establishing our greenhouse gas inventory, of building our bare bones climate action plan, we had brought it, I think at that point it was like $2.5 million into the city operating budget. We had shown this trust and collaboration to work, and that we just needed to get one line or one budget line up in the green. We had put forward, I think it was like 8 different things, but we had positioned an energy equity coordinator. This was in order to partner with the utilities in order to build some of this data as a way to. So we went through all this. They have acceleration models on what sustainability could look like, and we showed that this energy equity coordinator was a critical investment that would allow Tempe in these futures to build the data sets, to build the capacities and programs that would help this area in particular. So this was really critical for us, which then positioned a further grant. It's called the Cool Kids, Cool Futures, it's a Climate 40 work. It really positioned us to be successful for this future grant. So this was a little bit, sorry, I forgot to click forward. So all that to say, this is the social infrastructuring that we were using to build capacity for the resilient hubs or the resilient energy hubs. And that part of this was, yes, we need a building, whether it is a city building, whether it is a community building, what have you, that has a certain set of criteria. That yes, it is generating and storing solar, but the organization, whether it is a city or a church, is able to provide critical resources to the community within a 5 to 7 minute walk. And that for us, again, we used our visioning of what this can look like across the globe. We started out with cooling centers, which was really just open access for someone that is experiencing heat stress or heat stroke, to be able to come into a building to get water to cool down. The staff was trained in how to administer these services, and that we started actually in our fire stations. That this was literally just adding a community room to a fire station, and that by doing this, we're introducing the city as, or a building that is predominantly not seen as a community resource, even though it is, right? If your house burns, we hope the trucks come. But you cannot use the building. You cannot use the space. It is seen as, it's not accessible. So this is also how we started to introduce, again, the IGCC, that we were looking at different ways to introduce these types of concepts into the work. From there, the churches especially have really latched on to this idea because it helped to give purpose to, especially, and Tempe, I'm not sure if this is the same for the rest of the valley, but church communities are really having a difficult time with their congregations. They're shrinking in size, and that their sense of purpose has really been eroded. Someone that's not religious, I can't tell you beyond this, but that the organization itself was looking for different ways to fulfill their own missions. And that resilience hubs, which we provided these small grants to help them with water infrastructure to be able to give out water bottles and whatnot. That invited them into this space to be part of a larger mission. And secondly, there's another organization called the Interfaith Power and Light. Yep, that one. That has really been trying to push churches into the sustainability space. And that this combination, along with the Energy Equity Coordinator, helped to expand the concept of how the city can work with different community buildings. So I mention this because obviously collaboration is something that we have to do together. It's not just a strategy, but it's a mindset and how we recognize partners in different spaces, and that no one entity has all of the answers. Which brings me to my last kind of section, everyone's favorite word, patience. I definitely do not have patience. I've been on this commission for 10 years, and the rate of change in the early works was painfully slow. Painfully slow. Oh my God. And I say that though because in retrospect, and part of social infrastructure and the way that we build connections across the community does not pay dividends in the short term. That this is a long-term game, and that this is a culture building for change. So I wanted to show you Tempe's journey. I've also color-coded different parts to align with the different themes within the talks that the areas that we've talked about today. But in 2014, Lauren Kuby joins our city council. She pushes for the establishment of what was then called the Sustainability Commission and is now referred to as the Sustainability and Resiliency Commission. In 2016, we joined the Global Covenant of Mayors. Braden Kay was the first manager that was temporarily hired with a joint appointment at ASU. And it looks like this cut off a little bit. Whoops. And then there was an existing staff member that was reassigned to renewable energy work. This was when the power purchase agreements were really strong. That brought us to 2017, where the Sustainability Commission had launched an award program within the State of the Neighborhoods. It is an opportunity for the mayor to speak to different neighbors on everything that's going on, and in order to further raise the profile of sustainability work, we added a neighbor award and a business award to show how different people were working to build unique opportunities. We started working on evaluating the Urban Core Master Plan through a subcommittee, and then initiated joint commission meetings with the Transportation Commission. This was another way that we tried to build partnerships across. Now, transportation is obviously pretty easy to do, or conceptually. Yes, let's partner with the transit folks. But we also partnered with the Neighborhood Advisory Commission and the Arts Commission in particular. So then in 2018, another strategy was we raised the manager position to a director, because most grants you have to have a director if you're going to get money. And that the council adopted 2 performance measures, two of which you heard earlier is your community performance measures and your municipal. And that we also established a subcommittee on equity. This was on the water rate study. So for those that don't know, there's a process for establishing the water rates that you pay as a homeowner. And there was a huge kerfuffle where the rates that were going in were halted by a grand total of 4 people who did not want the rates to be installed, claiming that their bill was increasing by 25%, which is mathematically not possible. But it halted the second installment of the water rate study, which was for the large water users, and created this entire equity issue of how are we not addressing those that are using the most and the strain that they put on our community. So we, through the Sustainability Commission, worked on this set of equity principles that would help inform the city on how to do this work. So that was a pivotal moment for us to look at different workflows in which equity can be addressed in how things are implemented. We then went after the National Science Foundation collaborative grant on Food Water Nexus. And this is where our climate action plan started to come in to start to collect all of the different disparate works that were going in and to organize around this. So we're very excited that it passed unanimously and twice. So first as the bare bones in 2019, and we'll get into the full one in 2022. But it was the first in the state, first in the valley, second in the state. And this was, as the Climate Action Plan was really trying to put teeth to our emissions reduction work. And this is where we then started to work with the utilities on engaging the energy resilience hubs. I just realized I probably should have put this at the beginning, so apologize for that. So in 2022 or 2020, we were looking, this was where we got our first round of $2.5 million grants, started working on our Cool Kids program with the youth in Tempe schools, installed our climate action manager, and started having meetings with NAC, the Neighborhood Advisory Commission. So in 2022, we passed the Climate Action Plan update. This was also key. We used the word update as a way to show that we were not redoing anything, that we were putting more depth into what has already been done, and that this helped to reduce any anxieties that the community or council member might have had. And then finally, the highlight areas. This is actually things that we highlighted. So this was the International Green Construction Code, the Green Stormwater Infrastructure, elements like this that were critical for the community building work. And it was also how we organized our commission's focus, that the commission was exclusively focused on driving the highlight action items forward in order to free staff up to do the technical culture change work within the city. How do you actually administer the International Green Construction Code? So we organized this to take strain off of staff and to use the advocacy of the commission in a more effective way. So then in 2023, we actually received an award for our climate action work. This is when our international or AIA design competition took place. And then built, we did a lot of advocacy on our general plan. This is a guiding document that guides development. In the past, they've really taken out sustainability criterias, whether it was for density bonuses or other like character area planning. But this was, we finally got this passed. Oh my God, I think I cried that night. We got this plan passed, which I think had over 600 revisions in the different rounds that the Development Review Commission was working on. And we were there with every step of the way, but we finally got this through, which started to introduce mixed use into the city, or at least significantly more so. So then in 2024, a big achievement was passing the general plan. But this, I think, really is where the rate of change changed. That it was very piecemeal, very slow. But in this was, so in 2023, our Braden Kay was appointed by Gavin Newsom to run the extreme heat program out of California. And so when we hired the next director of sustainability, there was a reorg that centralized power underneath the sustainability office with the transportation division. And that this, to me, was an indicator that the city acknowledged what everything that we've done before, the area of gain that we have in both building and transit, and to address the budget shortfall that we were having. So for those that might be following Arizona politics, the state has removed the city's abilities to levy taxes on rentals. So Tempe was experiencing a $40 million budget fall. And this tactic of organizing support underneath the sustainability office by consolidating departments helped to the sustainability office to gain access to budgets that they wouldn't have otherwise, and to be able to make stronger co-funding efforts. And this was something that I did not know I was pushing for at the time. I had been having monthly meetings with the city manager and the mayor because they have trusted my work with the commission over the 7 years at that point. And so we resulted in this, which I'm elated for, because it has really shown how we've been able to push a lot faster. So I say that because all of that was a collaborative effort, that trusting people, working to build shared imagination, and to move faster and faster at this rate of change has really put, and this is our next kind of area that I'm personally working on. So I had stepped down as as the chair a couple of months ago in order to do this Fulbright researchship. But I said, don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. I still got to get this thing passed. And Corey Woods and Rosa, the city manager, were like, yeah, okay, when you get back, like we'll get back to this. But this moment of transformation and seeing how different people can be part of a vision that we are working to build a culture of accepting change, creating safe spaces for people to imagine and to practice and to partner in new ways was really important for our work. And that I found this from a while ago. This was our post. But I wrote a letter in our climate action plan. This was, I think, also another really great tool when we passed our climate action plan, was the different letters of support, and that the commission actually wrote one that was published. And this post, so this is Barbie Burke. She went to Tempe High School with my mom way back in the day. She served on the commission with me, and that night we again passed the climate action plan update, which to me was the final anchor of how trust in process, trust in listening, trust in collaborating has played a pivotal moment. So with that said, what's next for tomorrow, and what are some of the key takeaways that we've learned that I think might be really helpful here in your work? And the first is establishing a paper trail. So we've used our agendas and our meetings to strategically select partners that we were able to co-present different spaces. So for example, I mentioned the staff member that was worried about being able to execute on the International Green Construction Code. We had brought in their counterpart from the city of Scottsdale, and they co-presented to the commission on the same day. And that through this, and the way that we staggered the agenda allowed for the capturing of this logic in a documented manner that we could refer back to in the way that we were presenting to council, that we were talking to different community members. So use your meeting minutes as a tool to track logic and history. The second is looking proactively at long-term planning horizons. The water rate study was a big one for us. The general plan was a big one. The urban core master plan, as well as, and for those, I'm not sure if this is a practice here in Knoxville, but in Tempe, we have a budget acceleration process. So council gets I think it's like 10 chips, and they get to vote on in what areas they want to see the city produce a budget that would accelerate the accomplishment of their strategic priorities. and that this was a participatory voting tool. They put their chips in one basket, and that getting sustainability into that process allowed the city to, again, talking about imagination, play with how could we accelerate X. And that this budgeting process was really critical to play with different budget scenarios that we could really use to move things forward. And that with every step of this process, the way that the commission advocated changed. So, for example, our first, when we were first going through this budgeting process, the advocacy or the talking points were, we just want to see what the models could look like. Then the next one was, oh look, there's a really good acceleration model right here. This would be very helpful in this area. We would like to see an acceleration into this specific program. We're basically hand-holding council through this, but acknowledging that they have so many different other priorities that we are helping be their memory in advancing these initiatives forward. So changing or looking at your different long-term planning processes and obviously adjusting your asks to be unique to those steps. Then obviously we did a huge amount of work partnering with different commissions, nonprofit organizations, and utilities to co-share this work. And then individually advising council and mayor early, often, and at great length over coffee. I was very caffeinated during that time. And as many of you are here today, that showing up in person with honey, not so much vinegar, really moved our council and community forward in ways that I'm still finding surprising every day. So with that, I'm coming to the end, but I want to encourage each of you to imagine or to identify one of these principles that spoke to you. Was it trust, imagination, collaboration, or patience? Pick one and think about how we can bring it back into each of your works, whether it is with council members, whether it's with community members, or other organizations. Let's all commit to pick one and practice this in our day. And continue to think, what are small steps that we can take tomorrow that will help make a ripple effect in this culture of transformation? Because again, tech is not going to save us as much as AI for sustainability and carbon sequestration stuff. Tech will not save us. Our culture will, and technology will help with culture, but it is not an end-all be-all. So with that, the story of Tempe is not just our story. It's a shared story of what's possible when communities come together. Knoxville, you have an incredible moment in anchoring all of your incredible work into a full-blown climate action plan built on the expanding on your initial one. So let's look at the different ways in which these themes can help accelerate this work, because the staff definitely need it. Their work is hard enough as it is. The community definitely needs it. It's hard to imagine futures that you can't yet see. And also, I mean, besides taking down capitalism, but that's a whole other can of worms. So think about this as your shared story, how these principles can guide you forward. It's helped us, and it's been a pleasure chatting with you today, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Kendon. I think in the interest of time, our speakers are going to be around over lunch. So save your questions for them and make sure and seek them out if you've got anything you want to talk to them about. I think it's also so interesting to hear that while there are unique situations throughout the country and throughout the world, we're all facing a lot of those similar challenges. So thank you again, Kendon, for that great story. A lot of inspiring facts and tidbits. Okay, kind of a nod back to Grace, giving her a shout out. We're going to take a moment to breathe. We're going to take a little break. We're going to, let's get them back in about 8 minutes, and then we'll bring up Drew Ramsey, our next speaker. Again, restrooms are in the hallway, coffee and drinks are right back there, so we'll see you back here in about 8 minutes.